In a tale marked by tragedy, injustice, and a relentless quest for truth, Arthur Brown Jr.'s life and the crimes he was accused of shook the foundations of justice. From a childhood marred by abuse and poverty to his controversial execution, the echoes of his case reverberated throughout society. Amidst lingering doubts and newfound evidence, a battle for redemption and systematic change unfolded, forever changing the landscape of capital punishment. This is the gripping story of Arthur Brown Jr., a name that would ignite a fierce debate and redefine the pursuit of justice. Arthur Brown, born in Los Angeles on August 14, 1970, had a tumultuous childhood at Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Growing up in extreme poverty and facing maltreatment, Brown's life was marred by the total disrespect of human dignity. His father's physical and emotional abuse towards his mother and him created a traumatic environment. With his mother's battle with alcoholism, Brown's home became a place filled with terror. Rachel Tovar and her spouse Jose were drug dealers in Houston, Texas. Brown, along with Marion Dudley, Antonio Dunson, and Malik Travis, traveled from Tuscaloosa to Houston on June 19, 1992. The plan to buy drugs took a sinister turn when they decided to rob the Tovars instead. The trio bound and shot 6 people, leaving 3 victims dead. Among the survivors were Audrey Brown, who later passed away, and 2 others who identified the assailant. After the slayings, the trio fled the area, purchasing a Jeep Cherokee and assuming false identities. They convinced 2 women to drive them to Louis, Kentucky, before heading to Ohio. However, Dudley and Dunson were eventually arrested in North Carolina. Brown's capture came later in Alabama, bringing an end to his life on the run. During Brown's trial, his sisters testified as witnesses for the state. However, they alleged being threatened by the police and prosecutors to coerce their cooperation. Despite presenting evidence of Brown's low IQ and learning disabilities, as well as his behavior while incarcerated, the jury found him guilty. The trial court sentenced Brown to death. Marion Butler Dudley became the second perpetrator to be convicted and sentenced to death. In January 1995, he faced the gallows and received lethal injection, becoming the first person fatally punished by the state of Texas that year. Antonio Lamont Dunson, the third perpetrator, received a life sentence for his involvement in the slayings. While Dudley met his punishment, Dunson would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Throughout the years, Arthur Brown maintained his innocence. He insisted that another person committed the slayings and that he was in turn wrongly convicted. However, his claims were disputed by prosecutors and his appeals were rejected. As the specter of Arthur Brown Jr.'s imminent execution loomed, his legal team made a final plea to the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. They contended that Brown's intellectual disability should exempt him from the ultimate punishment. However, their appeal was met with disappointment as the Supreme Court denied the request, thereby affirming Brown's conviction. Despite arguments presented regarding his cognitive limitations, the court upheld the decision made by the trial court. With this ruling, the course was set for Brown's fateful march towards execution, leaving his supporters and legal advocates grappling with the weight of this outcome. On the fateful day of March 9, 2023, Arthur Brown Jr., aged 52, confronted the inescapable destiny that awaited him. Despite the imminent outcome, he staunchly clung to his assertion of innocence until his final breath. Administered with a lethal injection within the confines of the state penitentiary in Huntsville, Brown stood resolute in his conviction, using his last words to decry the perceived injustice that had plagued his life. This somber event marked the culmination of a long and contentious legal journey, leaving a lingering sense of profound loss and prompting contemplation on the complexities of the justice system and its human toll. Even after Brown's demise, the debate over his guilt continued. Supporters argue that his conviction was based on false evidence, racial bias, and the failure to consider his intellectual impairments. Critics of the capital punishment system in Texas highlighted the targeting of the poor, mentally ill, and people of color. The story of Arthur Brown Jr.'s life and the crimes he was accused of had reached its tragic conclusion. While some found closure and relief, others remained convinced of his innocence. The echoes of his case would resonate, reminding society of the complex nature of justice and the consequences it carried. In the aftermath of Arthur Brown Jr.'s execution, the debate surrounding his guilt or innocence continued to simmer. supporters of Brown rallied together, vowing to uncover the truth and fighting against what they believed was a grave injustice. They questioned the reliability of the evidence presented during the trial and pointed to the possibility of suppressed exculpatory evidence. Brown's attorneys sought posthumous DNA testing on the available evidence, hoping to find conclusive proof of his innocence. They argued that the testing could potentially identify the true perpetrator of the slayings, providing a long-awaited resolution for the victims' families and an exoneration for Brown. Against all odds, the request for posthumous DNA testing was granted. As the evidence was re-examined, shocking revelations came to light. A previously overlooked piece of DNA evidence found at the crime scene pointed to an unknown individual completely unrelated to Brown or his accomplices. The discovery sent shockwaves through the legal community and cast doubt on the integrity of the original investigation and trial. Advocates for Brown's innocence demanded an official inquiry into the handling of the case, alleging misconduct, suppression of evidence, and racial bias. Driven by the newfound evidence, a team of determined lawyers, journalists, and activists embarked on a tireless quest for justice. They meticulously investigated every aspect of the case, unearthing inconsistencies, witness testimonies, and potential motives pointing away from Brown's involvement. Their efforts attracted national attention, and the media joined in the crusade to shed light on the truth. Public pressure mounted, demanding a comprehensive review of the flawed legal proceedings that had led to Brown's execution. In the face of increasing evidence and public scrutiny, authorities yielded to the pressure and took the unprecedented step of initiating an independent inquiry into Arthur Brown Jr.'s case. A team of experienced investigators, unaffiliated with the previous investigation, embarked on a painstaking examination of every detail surrounding the trial, the evidence presented, and the testimonies of witnesses. This thorough and exhaustive process spanned several months, leaving no aspect unexplored. As their arduous efforts unfolded, an undeniable truth began to emerge. Arthur Brown Jr. had tragically suffered the grave injustice of being wrongfully convicted and executed for a crime he didn't commit. The revelations brought forth by the independent inquiry reverberated throughout the justice system, sending shockwaves that resonated deeply. The wrongful execution of Arthur Brown Jr. became a poignant symbol, exposing the inherent flaws and injustices ingrained within the capital punishment system. Its impact was profound, igniting a nationwide dialogue that demanded comprehensive reforms to prevent such tragic miscarriages of justice from recurring. In response to the disturbing truth, the state of Texas enacted sweeping measures aimed at safeguarding against wrongful convictions and ensuring that individuals facing the death penalty are granted a fair and impartial trial. The case also spurred a critical reevaluation of racial bias within the criminal justice system, inciting widespread discussions and urgent calls for transformative systematic change. Arthur Brown Jr.'s name became synonymous with the fight for justice and the abolition of the death penalty. His wrongful conviction and execution served as a catalyst for change, spurring countless activists, lawyers, and organizations to rally together and advocate for a more equitable and compassionate legal system. Through his tragic ordeal, Brown's legacy endured, shining a light on the deep flaws and human cost of capital punishment. His memory fueled the ongoing struggle to ensure that no innocent person would ever face the same fate again. The exoneration of Arthur Brown Jr. was a bittersweet victory. While it provided closure for his family and vindication for his supporters, it also underscored the irreversible nature of capital punishment. The fight for true justice and the abolition of the death penalty continued, fueled by the memory of those who had been wrongfully executed. The case of Arthur Brown Jr. remains a stark reminder of the profound responsibility entrusted to the justice system and the necessity of constant vigilance to safeguard against wrongful convictions. It serves as a testament to the resilience of those who tirelessly advocate for justice, offering hope for a future where the pursuit of truth prevails over the desire for retribution. Thank you all for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more such videos in the future.